Easy, Kobuk. Don't get too rowdy. Easy. Good boy, Asher. Kobuk, no. He's only a year old, so he still needs more socialization with other dogs, manners. But when I first took him in a few months ago, he was a ferocious, savage, dangerous dog. To people and dogs. He was very aggressive, and he's come a long way. He's just trying to play now, but he's too much. And yeah, healthy correction from Lenny, telling him, fuck off. I don't like that energy. Sometimes we got to just let dogs work their things out, as long as it's safe. There we go. Now they're playing. Good boy, Lenny. Hey. Good. Yeah, they're not crazy about his ultra hyper energy. This is what we want. And Lenny's, yeah, there we go. That's healthy. Asher was starting to get aggressive there, trying to bite him. Good, Asher. You just chill out. So it's our job to provide guidance when it comes to this kind of stuff. And when you have a big pack, especially like all three of my dogs are they're rescues that they used to be all batshit crazy, right? And we don't want any relapses. We want continued progress for the rest of their life. And the best way we can accomplish that is to be a strong leader of our pack. And a strong leader doesn't mean someone who's getting all worked up and emotional and yelling at their dogs, nor does it mean someone who's coddling their dogs and being like, it's okay, We step in when we need to. We're constantly leading. We provide guidance, which is basically just constantly telling the dogs what's right and wrong, what is okay and what is not. Asher, I'm okay with him getting a little snooty with Buck. This is Bucky, by the way. And because he's a lot, and Asher's just like, hey, that's too much. But if he really kept going after him and trying to attack him, then of course I'm going to step in and check Asher, Outside of that, I'm checking Bucky for being too intense. If he's not reading Asher's cues and he's like still trying to like instigate play when Asher's like, I don't want that, then it's my job to step in and be like, Bucky, get back, right? But this is good. Bucky he's doing way better than I thought he would. When I first let them out, he took off after Lenny like a bat out of hell and started like chasing him around. So that was an immediate correction. He's wearing a remote collar, and this is the remote right here. So I have absolute control over him. I don't need remote collars on these two because I trust them entirely with other dogs, and they're very well behaved with other dogs because they've been with me long enough to learn. He is still only, he's new he's ready to go at this point to a foster or an adopter, but he's only a year old, and he was I took this dog in the day before he was set to be euthanized because he was trying to attack any human he saw. And with dogs, he was selective, but he was definitely dog aggressive, and you could not trust him around other dogs, especially dogs that are young and his size or bigger. So he is a completely different dog than he was 3 months ago, but still not the kind of dog where you just can let your guard down and totally trust them, like Barney and Noxie, who are like 2 shades shy of perfect. I still have to watch him and make sure that he's still making good decisions at all times. And when he's not, I need to let him know. And it's very important when we're trying to promote good behavior and discourage bad behavior. See, this is good right here, actually. Good dogs. Very good. I was saying it's extremely important that when dogs make poor decisions that could jeopardize their well-being, it's very important that we provide consequences for those decisions to motivate the dog to stop making them. That is the essence of discipline, That is the essence of punishment. It is a necessary part of dog raising, dog training, behavioral modification, right? It is an aspect of leadership. But leadership is not punishment. Punishment is just one part of leadership. Leadership is also reinforcing good choices with rewards. You know, yes, we discourage poor choices with punishment, and there's a wide variety of punishment, and there are endless, variations and levels of intensity when it comes to punishment, and that is all entirely based upon the dog's physical and emotional sensitivity or lack thereof, in tandem with the level of the violation of the poor choice that they're making, right? And so that's a part of leadership. But another part, like I said, is rewarding good choices with rewards. Kind of flubbing my words here, trying to make sure I'm paying attention while I lecture. And rewarding good behavior, just like punishment has a lot of takes on different forms. It could be you just taking a step towards dogs like this, and using that spatial pressure. That's a form of punishment. That's a correction. Now, they didn't really do anything wrong, so, sorry, Barney. Sorry, old man. He's such a good boy. All right, so rewards. It could just be a treat. It could be a toy. It could be a pat on the head and going, good dog. That's a form of rewarding good behavior. And in these types of scenarios where I'm doing pack socials, I'm not busting out treats and toys because that's a recipe for disaster. If dogs become competitive for treats and toys, then what happens? A fight breaks out. And treats and toys escalate the level of excitement. And one thing we have to always be aware of is excitement is always the precursor to aggression. It's really always the precursor to all poor decisions, right? When company shows up at your house and Asher nips at them, that is a direct result of him not being able to control his excitement. Everything gets too intense and his go-to is to behave aggressively, right? So we need to discipline him in those moments. There needs to be a consequence for those behaviors that ultimately jeopardize his well-being. And so what I'd like for you to take away from this little bit about rewards and punishments is that it's not an emotional thing. We're not trying to teach the dog a lesson for being a bad dog. There's no such thing as a bad dog. There's just a dog that makes good choices and poor choices. He is becoming a wonderful dog, but he used to make nothing but poor choices, and that's why he was set to be killed at 1 year of age. He was such a wingnut that he was going to be killed. And when the rescue reached out to me yeah, we got this dog, he's really ferocious, we can't even get a muzzle on him, we think we need to put him down, but he's only a year. And I'm I cannot accept that, bring him to me, I'm gonna fix him, because he's only a year old. If he was 6 or 7 years old and he had been attacking people and dogs his whole life, it would be a different story. But a year-old dog is a very rehabilitable dog. So, backtracking here, what I'd like for you to take away from this lecture is when it comes to punishment, we don't punish because we're angry at the dog. We don't punish to blow off our steam of frustration. We punish dogs because we love them, and we don't ever want the dog to get to a point where we are forced to rehome it or euthanize it because it's so poorly behaved that it's either become a danger or it's become such a nuisance in our life that we can't take it anymore. All of the worst dogs that I've ever taken on that have just the worst set of shitty behaviors, Barney, quit barking, it's annoying. They're all dogs whose owners never disciplined them. Let them get away with bloody murder, and no matter what poor choices they made, the owners never corrected those choices. Now, sometimes that's because the owner was negligent. Other times it's just because they don't know how. The concept of punishment, it's well, what is effective? What's ethical and humane versus abusive when it comes to physical corrections? When it comes to remote collars, prong collars, choker chains, things like that. There's a lot of pseudo dog trainers out there that preach this garbage nonsense that we should never punish dogs and that any form of corporal punishment is abusive and inhumane and it'll only make the dogs more aggressive or more poorly behaved, and nothing could be farther from the truth. That type of nonsense is as ridiculous and as destructive as the concept of attempting to raise a child in a consequence-free environment, where they're allowed to do whatever they want and there's never any punishment or consequence for behaviors that will eventually put that child's life in danger as they move into adolescence and early adulthood. And a perfect example that I love to use, and Zach, I may have already mentioned this to you in our first phone call, is that buddy that we all had, at least that one buddy in high school whose parents let us party in their basement until the wee hours and turned a blind eye and let that kid do whatever he wanted. There were never any consequences for his poor decisions, and he was always in trouble at school. He was always, eventually getting in trouble with the law in late teenage, early 20s. And, those guys aren't doing so well these days. The one that I knew, whose parents just let him do whatever he wanted, he was super cool in high school. We loved partying in his basement. That house was the place to be because we could do whatever we wanted, and his parents just looked the other way. But he grew up battling drug addiction, battling being in and out of jail. He was abusive to his girlfriends. He just grew up to be a crummy human being. And at the age of 40, that guy was living in like a roach-infested studio apartment in the ghetto. He couldn't keep a job. He bartended and snorted cocaine and eventually he committed suicide. Now, I know this is a very extreme example, and that's a really depressing story, but a lot of times I think it's a really excellent analogy because there's so many. We euthanize like 4 million dogs a year. People dump their dogs in shelters all the time because they get them in puppyhood. They don't do anything to train them or to even give them good guidance. Like, forget about obedience training. When I think of like raising a dog, obedience is secondary. I focus 20% of my effort on obedience training and 80% of it on behavioral training, because a well-behaved dog doesn't necessarily need excellent obedience. I want him to have it anyway, and it's something I love, relying on stable obedience, but obedience training is easy. A lobotomized monkey could teach a dog all the basic commands and remote collar train the dog and get it trained off leash to where it could walk around the neighborhood leash free, passing other people, other dogs, traffic, etc., and be totally fine. That is a very easy thing to accomplish with 99% of all dogs. But teaching a dog not to, act like a fool when company arrives, that's a challenge. Teaching a dog not to attack other dogs if it's an insecure dog or if it's a dominant dog, major challenge. Behavioral training is a 24/7 job for the good boy, Lenny, good dog, for the first several years of a dog's life. Behavioral training is what we need to focus on. We can accomplish obedience excellence training a dog for 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. If we're consistent and we're good at it, within like 4 or 5 weeks, that dog is off leash with obedience excellence. Maybe not like competition level obedience, but for any normal dog owner, it's like, wow, this is a totally different dog. But behavioral training is not 20 minutes in the morning. That is a 24-hour-a-day job, where whenever the dog is outside of the crate, our eyes are on the dog. We're not just letting them do their own thing and ignoring them. We're not leaving them alone in the backyard where they learn all of their crappy behaviors and get really good at them, like incessantly barking, fence fighting with the neighbor's dogs, digging holes, eating their own poop if they get bored enough, whatever, Nor are we leaving them to their own devices inside the home, where they start doing things like marking. And, oh wow, just noticed this. I would imagine if they really wanted to, they could probably get through that hole, so I need to fix that today. and Matt right there. These neighbors here have big dogs, and I haven't met them, but I do know that they run along this fence and bark at my dogs, so I'm going to reinforce this entire line of fencing with my own fence panels. So anyway, I think I've rambled on enough. I hope this lecture, though jumbled, gives you guys kind of a beginning idea of what it means to be a leader for your dogs and to guide them. I don't want to micromanage every single little movement they make. I want to give them enough freedom to make good choices and bad choices, right? But if those choices are bad, I need to be there right away, no matter the dog. You know, I don't care if it's a dog that's timid and afraid or if it's a dog that's domineering and aggressive. They all make bad choices and they all need guidance. They all need leadership. And sometimes they need discipline. And I'll wrap this up by saying this little guy here, yeah, there's a correction. Good boy, Kobuk. Good boy. So he bit Kobuk there, like, back off. And Kobuk responded exactly how I would hope he would, which is like, okay, I'll back off. Barney's just perfect. He knows when to put it on and when to turn it off. This dog with other dogs is perfect. He's 14 years old, too. He's horrible in some other ways, or he was when I first got him, but he's always been great with other dogs. I mean, he just endlessly wants to play, and he's really sensitive to fearful dogs. He's very cautious with aggressive dogs, so yeah, he's a good boy. But I'll wrap this up by saying Asher is not the bigger problem here. Lenny is the problem. Which is interesting, Zach, because I know you said maybe Asher will turn out to be like, I don't want to say a better dog than Lenny, because that's just not using the right set of words, but perhaps less of a struggle. I think he will, and that is because Lenny, I can tell, just after like a day and a half, 2 days, of having these dogs, Asher is more responsive to following my lead and checking himself when I tell him no. I haven't punished either one of these dogs yet. They're brand new. They're not doing anything horribly wrong. But I did miss an opportunity to punish Lenny when I brought them up from the basement, which is where I keep dogs crated on one side, and the other side is where I'll be doing obedience training and content creation. My basement is like a perfect setup for this. But when I let them out, I don't put leashes on them. I just let them out and let them run up the stairs into the backyard. Well, this morning, Lenny took a right-hand turn into my kitchen, ran into my living room, and marked Bucky's placeboard. He peed on it. He peed on the ground. And, he was too fast. He went in there and came back out before I got even to the top of the stairs and realized that instead of running outside like Asher did, he ran into my living room. And now see, Lenny just tried to mount Bucky there. So I don't want that. So yeah, that was had I been on top of it, that would have been a perfect opportunity for me to punish Lenny for marking in my house. I don't tolerate a dog trying to urinate or poop inside my home. That's not acceptable. But I missed that opportunity. It's in the past. You can, hey. That's enough. You can't bring a dog back to a mess like that and punish it. You have to issue rewards and corrections within a second or two of the good or bad choice, or else the dog won't learn. So it's not fair. It would be counterproductive to take him back to that pee spot and punish him. But had I seen it happen, I could have stepped in and given him like a little finger poke. Hey, no, we don't tolerate that here, and start providing consequences for that. I was concerned that he would mark inside my home because he is obsessively marking in my yard. And again, that is, hey, enough. That's a domineering behavior, That's like a dog going, I was here, I own this spot, and the more we allow that, the more that dog thinks he's running the show. And that's what I see in Lenny so far. He's insanely cute, and he likes to come up to me and get lovin's and stuff, and that's a part of dog raising. I give dogs physical affection, right? But they need to earn it for the most part. If we smother our dogs with massive amounts of unearned physical affection, we're constantly shoving treats in their face, whether or not they deserve it, and we're trying to accomplish everything by bribing the dog with smooches and treats and stuff like that, we are going to raise spoiled dogs that are poorly behaved, that make bad decisions, that blow us off when we're trying to tell them what to do. Screw you. I own this place. I own you, not the other way around. I'm the boss here, not you. And as soon as a dog starts to think that, we have problems. Even if they're tiny little adorable dogs like these two, it's important with all dogs that they know they are not the boss of the house. And there are varying degrees of that type of, situation with a dog. Like, some dogs think that they're the boss in some situations, but they submit to us in others, varying degrees. But for the most part, I see Asher submitting to me, like, oh, okay, I get it, you're in charge. I see Lenny challenging me, like, I'm not going to listen to you. Instead of going outside, I'm going to run in your living room and urinate on Bobby's placeboard. So, neither one of them are problem dogs. I mean, these dogs are going to be fairly easy to rehabilitate and train. I'm just saying, I don't see Asher as the main issue here. I see Lenny as the issue. But, my opinion may change over time. We'll see. Anyway, hope you guys have a great day.